Everyone, welcome back to the Match Grade podcast. I got a special guest, Rich Nance from Wartech CQC. We've known each other for quite a while. I think we both finally met up at one of the Spalding instructor courses, and it was a good meet, good time there. A little bit about Rich. He's been doing this one a long time. He's firearms instructor, combatives. Did a lot of stuff. He's got a strong background in martial arts and law enforcement. 26 years. He retired, finally had enough of the law enforcement role and decided, I want to move on. He retired as a sergeant. And in that time, he was patrol supervisor, firearms instructor, SWAT team leader, did some defensive tactics supervising for their program, made that up. Um, did a lot of training for the law enforcement guys in less lethal munitions, impact weapons, emergency vehicle ops. One of my favorites. You get to drive fast with the funny lights on top. Um, he's a lifelong martial artist. He's got a second degree black belt in Shudokan karate. Did I say that right, Rich? I hope.
Yes.
Uh, he's also a combatives and firearms instructor, and as I might have mentioned, he's a handgun combatives instructor. Founded Nance Training and Consulting, which looks like is that another offshoot or uh,
Yeah. I've had a little bit of an
second.
identity crisis with the logos and stuff over the years. You know how things go. You think that your business is going to go in a certain direction, and sometimes it sort of takes you in a different direction, which is what happened with me. Uh, Initially, I thought I was going to mainly teach private citizens, and it came to be more law enforcement, and then back to more private citizens. So I just figured what I'm calling the parent company now, if you will. There's only one employee, but I have to have a bunch of different companies. But Nance Training and Consulting is like the umbrella. And then with that, I have Wartac, CQC, Wartac Combative. So that's kind of Wartac is more the system I do nowadays, and the Nance Training and Consulting is sort of a more um, palatable name, like to if you're in court testifying, Wartac is not as good of a name as Nance Training and Consulting. So you got to kind of
That's
go
right.
with the flow as far as that stuff goes.
Got to soften it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mostly recently, you've been getting your face all over media stuff. It's pretty interesting. What? You were the tech editor for Guns and Ammo for a while, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
Are you still
still,
doing
still,
that?
yep. Yep,
Still
still
doing
doing
that?
that.
Okay. The self-defense editor, Handguns Magazine. You contribute to Outdoor Sportsman groups, all their special interest stuff, and you got this co-host of Handgun TV thing going on. That's
Yeah, I'm
pretty
actually
cool.
this
And
is the first year as the executive producer, so a little bit more
oh,
responsibilities and yeah, wrangling guns and doing all that logistical stuff, which is a little bit more challenging than I assumed it would be, but still it's a lot of fun.
a lot of behind the scenes stuff, I'll bet.
Yeah.
And then one of the most recent one is you took charge of the Aim Point Talking Aim podcast,
Yeah,
which is
the
pretty
Taking Aim
cool.
podcast. Yeah, it's been fun, man. We've been doing that. I think we started filming about December of 24. I think about March is when they started airing, March of 25. So we've had several episodes, some really good guests on there, fun stuff. We'll have to bring you on there as well and kind of, reverse engineer what we're doing today. And
Yeah, it's
yeah,
probably
I
going to be
really
a lot
enjoy it.
better than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You got all
It's
that.
always
You got
something.
all the studio behind you.
It's always something. And, I'm going to rat us out because I'm good for this. But before we started recording here, we had a few technical difficulties, and I am intimately familiar with technical difficulties with all this technology. But it is cool. And usually the final product is worth the wait and the hassle. So,
Yeah. No, it's we usually get there eventually, and if you didn't have fun getting there, like screwing with all the internet and I went over and drop kicked the router a couple times and it looks like it's working. So we'll see what
yeah,
happens.
nice.
Rich, formally welcome to the Match Grade podcast. Finally, we got this
Thanks, bro.
together.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you, man. It's been a while. Trying to think of the last time we've seen each other, if it was maybe at a shot show or, you had me out there a few years ago. That I don't know, man. It's been a while though.
Yeah. It was probably probably going on a year and a half ago at the NRA show.
Okay.
We were wandering around with the old man Spalding and
Yeah, yeah,
watching his shenanigans play out.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been a bit. It's been a bit. So, Rich, I sent you a format of stuff, but the one thing I want to get across, because I want to talk about this before we really get into it, because we all know how we're going to go. It's going to go all over the place. Those usually make for the best stuff. But you are coming out here in about 3 weeks to New York, behind the wall to New Yorkistan. And let's talk about what you're going to come out to do.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I'm from California, so I'm familiar with all the ridiculous gun laws and all of that. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm looking forward to coming out, man. We're going to do a close quarter pistol, which is a 2-day course. We're doing it in a little bit different format this time. We're going to do day one is going to be non-live fire. So it's all
yeah,
the things that aren't sexy and aren't that fun for a lot of people, but it's what people need, right? It's like eating their vegetables or whatever, working out. It's
yeah.
something we don't want, but but once we do it, we realize we need that and it's good for us. And that's one of the things I like about this course is it's geared toward people who are already proficient shooters. And what my goal is to bring up their skill level in, let's say, lunging distance, because at that distance, a lot of your typical standard shooting techniques, arms fully extended to sighted fire position, things like that, that can leave you extremely vulnerable in that close quarter setting. Now, marksmanship is not the issue, right? I mean, we're so close that marksmanship should not be an issue, but it becomes an issue because the person you're dealing with in a real self-defense situation is animated. He's living, he's breathing, he's not a cardboard or paper target, right? So he
Right.
has a say in what's happening. So it requires us to sort of change our tactics a little bit to give ourselves a better chance of prevailing. So day one, we're going to do weapon retention, both in holster and in hand. We focus certainly a lot more on in-hand weapon retention because as a concealed carry holder, which most of us are, uh, the fact that your gun remains concealed is your primary mode of retention. But we still are going to cover some issues because you may be in a situation where you're in a stand-up grappling situation and maybe the assailant sees that you're armed, or maybe he feels that you're armed, or maybe it's someone who knows that you carry a concealed gun and this is the day they're going to kick your ass, right? So we have to have
Right.
some tactics for retaining our holstered firearm, even if we're a concealed carry holder. But the bulk is going to be on in-hand retention. And there's a lot of people that really underestimate the importance of this. One of the most flippant responses I see, and it's very common, is I'll just shoot them off. Meaning, if someone grabs your gun, you'll just shoot them off, the muzzle. And that's easier said than done for several reasons. The first being that, if someone grabs the muzzle of your gun, they're probably not going to stand directly, behind the muzzle or in front of the muzzle, however you want to look at that. They're going to get
One would
offline. They're
think.
going to move the gun. And then if you're carrying a semi-automatic pistol, you're probably relegated to one round before you're going to have to clear a malfunction, right? If that dude's holding the slide can't reciprocate. And so then you're going to end up fighting this dude for your gun. And that's where the techniques and tactics that we're going to cover really come into play. And then again, when you separate, you got to make sure that that gun is clear. So our goal is not to clinch up with this dude and fight this guy when he's, at bad breath distance. What we would like to do is maintain distance. So that's the goal. That's our primary goal. We can maintain distance, ideally with footwork, so we can keep both hands on the gun, everything else. But as the distance closes, because as I mentioned, it's not just us, right? The bad guy gets a say as to what happens. And if you end up in that close range, we're going to cover how you can thrive in that environment and ultimately disengage and then get to a more sighted fire position where you can deliver more accurate rounds and stuff like that. So it's not a hard skill to learn necessarily, but nobody's born knowing how to do this stuff, right? So you have to learn, and you have to realize that what may work for 10 yards and out does not work for 7 feet and in necessarily.
Right. Yeah. I when I went through my training days of learning, the close up, the retention stuff, and retention and disarm. One of the instructors like, your gunfight is most likely not going to start at 7 to 10 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the guy's going to get in your face. It's going to start at contact distance. It's going to start when you're about to get cuff number two on, and cuff number one goes on, and it's go time,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or it's just in the restaurant they get up close. They want to feign their way into getting in tight, so you have zero reactionary gap and time. So, they were stressing the fact that you're not going to see this guy coming all the time.
Yeah.
It's going to happen right here, like you said, breath smelling distance.
Yeah, and another thing we're going to get to along those lines, Dave, is counter weapon tactics. And by that, I don't mean necessarily that, some dude has a knife and you're going to blend with the blade and get him in a wrist lock and take him down and strip the knife away. I mean, that's fiction, as far as I'm concerned. But what we will do are cover some basic principles that can help you sort of weather that initial storm of facing someone who's armed with a weapon and get to a position where you can deploy your handgun. So that's something that requires a lot of training, right? In a 2-day course, and as much as you teach, I know you understand this. All you can really do is kind of show someone that there may be a gap in their skill set and something that they
Yeah,
should focus on, and give them some things that they can digest and take home and practice. They're not going to be proficient in 2 days, right? So a lot of this stuff, even though we always look for the simplest techniques and tactics for our students, it's not always it's maybe the simplest we could come up with, but it's still not necessarily simple. It requires a lot of repetitions. And when you combine those gross motor based techniques, in other words, those techniques that are more apt to hold up under the duress of a real attack, when you combine that with some training, some repetition, some skilled repetition, then that's where you're really going to see your ability rise in close quarter shooting. Here's another thing about
yeah,
what we do and why it's not sexy is it's not it's not as measurable. If you go to the range, you have your shot timer, you have the target. Sometimes we video ourselves or whatever, so we get the shot timer and the target are telling how that iteration went, right? Did you make your time? Did you get your hits? And so that's tangible stuff. And if you practice that same thing over and over and over, by the end of the day, you're saying, wow, look at that. I drew from concealment and got my A zone hit in 1.2 seconds or 0.99 seconds. So you can measure that. And also you're not in there, you know, uh, sweaty shirt to sweaty shirt and rolling around,
mm,
getting hit and all this stuff. So I've seen that from my law enforcement days, and even today, what people want are the exciting drills, the high round count drills. They want the things that are measurable and tangible so they can leave there sort of with bragging rights. But when it comes to learning how to fight with a gun as opposed to just learning how to shoot, a lot more of it has to do with, well, how did that repetition feel? Did I have power in that technique? And how do you determine that? Well, maybe let's say you're talking about muzzle strike, striking with the muzzle of your weapon in close quarters. Well, you can strike full force on a pad, like a kicking shield or a bag or something like that, but you're not going to strike full force on your partner. You know what I mean? So there's that little training
yeah,
artificiality that's always present. But yeah, understanding that while this may not be sexy stuff, it's stuff that you probably need unless you've had this training before. It's something that it's kind of the missing link, and that's why I think a lot of students are a little apprehensive about it initially, but by the end, they usually get it, and they're usually very very thankful that they now have some tools that they for a task that they didn't never even knew they might find themselves in.
yeah. It's that what if factor. I remember, I've known this for a while, but I remember, Spalding nailed, sent it home all the time. It's like, the missing aspect of what we do as concealed carriers is the interactive part. And
Yep.
nobody wants to do it because it's embarrassing the first couple times because you're not used to it. It's scary. It's weird. It just feels awkward. But
Yeah.
once you get used to it, you do it all the time.
Yeah. It's like me in jujitsu right now. I'm a very, very new beginner. I just admit I suck. I don't know what I'm doing, and I go there and go
Yeah.
through it. You know what I mean?
That's all you got to
It's
do.
something that you have to, if
Um,
you're not willing to look foolish, you're never going to get over that hurdle to make you better type of thing. But yeah, for
yeah.
sure, especially what I've noticed are instructors. A lot of instructors don't even like to shoot in front of their students because they're afraid that they may mess up. But what I like are the instructors, and I've trained with some really high profile instructors that have missed some shots that they shouldn't have missed. And as a student, I like it because it gives me hope that, hey, man, if this dude who's way better than me misses, then it's okay to miss once in a while. That's why we're here. So yeah, I
Yeah,
always enjoy the instructors who sort of have the mentality, and this is what I've always tried to have is it's not about what I can do as an instructor, it's about what you can do. And so,
right.
with me as a lifelong martial artist, I have certain an aptitude for certain things like striking in close quarters with your offhand. Now that's something that is difficult because A, it's your less dominant hand, and B,
Yeah,
you don't have a lot of room to develop power in your strike. So you really have to have some good hip rotation, some good shoulder movement, and things like that to get power. And that's something that, because of my training, that comes sort of naturally to me. But other people, that's not going to be the case. And that's what I like is a lot of the students that take this close quarter pistol course are shooters who don't really have that empty-handed skill set. And once in a while I'll get
yeah.
something that's the exact opposite. I'll get a dude who's this badass, MMA dude or whatever the case is, but not really a very proficient shooter. So it's always about being more well-rounded, and that's what I think this course is pretty good for.
It's more solutions, I always didn't like the saying, but it's more tools in the toolbox. It's more
Yeah,
solutions that I have available for a wider range of settings.
yeah,
But yeah, I remember last time you came out, we had a pretty good response to it. We had a lot of excitement for it. And grappling in the grass over there at Docks was pretty cool.
yeah,
Just rolling, everybody rolling around, getting all grass stained. So
yep.
we'll see how it goes in the new training center here that you'll get to check out. So gang, real quick plug on this. It's going to be July 25, 26 here at the home base on Saturday, and then Sunday we're going to go to our private range and do the live fire application of the class. You can sign up on the website safeinrochester.com. Just look under special events. Comment below. What we'll do is we'll actually put the link in the comments below for you to find it. But we've got a good class now, but you know what? There's room for you. There's room for everybody to come out and play. Rich will be really happy if like 18 or 20 people showed up. So
Maybe
we'll to make
16.
it
Maybe 16.
maybe 16. We'll cut it off about
Yeah, yeah,
16.
yeah. I don't want to work
Yeah,
that
my
hard,
rooms
dude.
aren't
Come
that
on.
big. Yeah. Um, so Rich, we'll put another plug at the end of this too. But I shot you a few questions, and it was kind of interesting because I gave these to Dave too when I did his interview. And it was kind of both. And you can answer either the law enforcement side or your training side. I don't care. But, like it's kind of like let's get a little introspective into Rich Nance and see what he can share. So question number one, what accomplishment are you most proud of in your career? And again, pick one. Doesn't matter which one.
Yeah, yeah. From a law enforcement perspective, one of the things I'm most proud of is that I think I played a small role in our defensive tactics and firearms programs sort of coming together. And I think that this is sort of a product of when I entered law enforcement and sort of where we're at now. There's been huge strides, but I can say that initially, the defensive tactics or the arrest and control stuff was way over here on one side, and way on the other side was the firearm stuff. And the firearms guys kind of, those guys don't know what they're talking about the defensive tactics cadre, and sort of vice versa. So you're learning different stance, you're learning different things for all these situations, and it's really just it's too much to remember. And also, it sort of falsely assumes that your critical incident will either be an empty-handed fight or a shooting, when in reality I think we know these days there's enough dash cam footage and everything else that we realize that those things need to be integrated, because what starts as an empty hand altercation could escalate to an armed encounter,
Yeah.
And, the opposite may be true as well. You shoot someone in close quarters with a handgun, if they're hell bent on reaching you, they're probably going to reach you. And then at that point, you may not be able to get more rounds on target, right? You may have to be able to extract your gun from their hands, strike them, disengage, and clear your pistol and go from there. So, I think what I'm most proud of, I think I was a pretty good cop. I was pretty competent officer. I was always much more interested in the tactical side. I was in investigations for a very short time, and that was, I think, to give me some experience in investigations before I promoted to sergeant. But everything I focused on was all tactically oriented stuff. So I like to think that I played a small part in making our officers more well-rounded in both the firearms and the defensive tactics portion. And I retired in 2023, and one of the things I kind of took solace in is like I'm leaving this in good hands because the dudes
Yeah.
who I sort of mentored, they're at a point where they're as good as me, if not better than me, and they're younger, they're more fit, they're more enthusiastic, and they're more energetic. And so now I'm excited to see where they're going to take things, and so that's, I think I'm most proud probably of my teaching, of my coaching. I hate to say instructor because in law enforcement, there's a lot of instructors and all they do is parrot what they were taught and they don't understand the why behind it. So I like to
Hmm.
think that I'm one of those instructors who did research way above and beyond whatever I'm going to learn at the police department, and I brought back that stuff and taught it to our guys. So I think that's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you did a lot of good stuff there. Um, so we'll skip the second question because I think you just answered it.
Yeah,
Like,
I may
what are the
answer three or
biggest
four
changes
questions
you've
at
seen,
once.
right? Yeah, that's okay. So let's go to the firearms training world. Let's skip into that one a little bit. All right. What's been the biggest change you've seen from your perspective in the firearms training world?
Wow, it's been a lot, man. I mean, going way back, the Magpul DVDs with
Oh,
Chris
I remember
Costa and
those.
Travis Haley,
Yeah.
those kind of made being a firearms instructor like something cool that people aspired to do. And I mean, you could, I don't do it that way. I don't like, okay, whatever. But no matter what your feelings are on the topic, if you are a firearms instructor, you probably owe a little debt of gratitude to those guys and those videos because that was a big thing to promote training, to make training look fun and everything else. And also what a lot of what those guys were doing, I mean, was super viable stuff. They just did it in a way that made it exciting, which no one had really thought of before. So I like that, but I think there's a lot of emphasis right now on speed shooting, if you will. I mean, there's a lot of different names for that. And I think that being able to shoot fast is an important skill, regardless of the situation, right? Um,
Oh yeah.
However, if you are training, you're an accountant, for instance, right? And you're a concealed carry holder, I'm not sure how relevant taking a class where you're carrying a double stack 1911 and 14 magazines and wearing a chest plate and all that. Not sure how relevant that is to you. It may be fun and enjoyable, and that's cool if that's your thing, if you want to go for a weekend of fun. But I think that sometimes uh, Instagram and social media sort of emphasize speed over all else. And me, we're all victims of our own training. Me coming from the law enforcement side, uh, you never want to shoot faster than you can hit, But at the
Yeah.
same time, if you don't compete, if you don't ever push the envelope, then you don't know how fast you can go and still hit. So speed is absolutely important. But I think sometimes people are looking for drills that they can master and shoot really fast. And I think sometimes you could lose the forest for the trees if all you're concerned with is speed, right? Because one of the
Yeah.
principles that we focus on, both you and I, and Dave Spalding certainly focuses on this, is awareness. And I'm not saying that you can say, well, I'm going to be aware of my surroundings, so I don't need to be fast. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is in a situation, if you're able to read a situation for what it is and maybe draw covertly, preemptively, you're going to be better off than trying to show off that sub 1 second draw against someone who's
Yeah.
already has a weapon drawn against you, right? So uh, being fast is important. Being accurate is important, but so is having an understanding of tactics and understanding of the law. I find this one to be really important, not just so you don't go to prison, which is a pretty big that's a pretty big selling point in and of itself,
Yeah. It's a pretty
but
good goal.
yeah, but the more familiar you are with the legal aspects of defending yourself or defending an innocent third party, excuse me, the less hesitant you're going to be. Even as a cop, I knew that when I first started, I would be hesitant because I'm like, dude, do I have enough to stop this guy? Or if he runs, can I chase, all this type of stuff. But then when I started educating myself and I became more familiar with the laws and my authorization as a police officer to detain someone in certain instances, I became much more confident. And when you're knowledgeable about the law, it makes you it makes you better in the moment because you're not thinking about things that are coming down the road. You're thinking about what do I do right now to stop this threat that I'm facing, and that's where your headspace should be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I enjoyed, watching a lot of the trainers out there, years ago, you could pick out the ones who were, like you said, they were just parroting, they were regurgitating what they were taught, right? It's like, well, my guy that taught me told me that, and then the guy that taught him told him that, and the guy that, and it's that generational pass down, and
Yep,
we've all probably played the telephone game. You know what happens when you get around the circle, the message change, right?
absolutely. And then
But
pretty soon you got instructors that don't know the why behind it. Well,
yeah,
I do it this way because Dave Spalding taught me this. Okay, well, how did he
yeah,
come up with it, right? I mean,
right,
but at the same time, when you're new, you absolutely have to pick somebody and sort of model things after them because you don't know any different. You don't know any better, I should say, right? So you have
oh
to
yeah,
have those influences, but even your greatest influences, you still have to look at their stuff objectively. And that's why, my two biggest influences in combatives and martial arts are combatives and shooting are Dave Spalding from the firearm stuff and Kelly McCann for the empty hand stuff or the combative stuff. And
oh
even
yeah,
as much respect as I have for both of those individuals who I mean, it's hard for me to express how much I respect those guys. I still part ways with them on certain things and do things differently because based on my experience or my body type or whatever, I think this works a little bit better. And I think that as instructors or coaches, we owe that to our students, not just to give them what we were taught, but to analyze it and come up with something. And we may figure out a way that's better or a tweak that's better than what we were taught. And that's
right,
something that evolves the entire industry, when you're not afraid to veer off course a little bit. That said, I think some people take that to the extreme and they teach some weird shit just because it's different. Well, that's not what I'm advocating, but you should understand the why behind why it is you do what you do. And when there's a question that's asked, you owe it to the student to understand. And I'm not saying we know everything, but if it's a topic like I'm teaching when I come out there, right? Weapon retention, close quarter shooting, virtually any question that a student has, I better know what I'm talking about and not just make shit up, right? You have to understand, you have to have a knowledge base that's extensive enough because I can't say, well, because Dave says this, because Dave
yeah.
ain't there, man. You're the dude. You have to understand it and you have to be able to explain it, that's another thing. And I won't stray into this topic because we'll be talking for 2 hours about it. But there's a lot of
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of instructors who are phenomenally skilled, but that doesn't necessarily equate to being able to transfer that knowledge to their students. There may be an
yeah,
instructor who's less skilled, but he's an excellent teacher. So ultimately, what's going to be more beneficial to the student? A world champion
right.
shooter who can't teach his way out of a paper bag, or someone who's not a world class shooter but who understands, is competent, can demonstrate proficiently, and can explain the why behind it. I'd rather train with the latter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just recently I was training with one of those people who's a rarity, who is a really good shooter, literally a world-class champion. And he can communicate that very well. It's Mike Seeklander.
Yeah.
And I
I, I've
spent the
I've heard
weekend.
nothing but yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about him. I have one of his
Yeah,
books that I really enjoy. So yeah, man,
hmm
kudos to you. That had to be a good event to be at for sure.
it was fun. It was hot. It was, it was hotter than normal for even Western Colorado, but it was pretty warm. So, no, but it's just amazing what a lot of people assume, like, oh, he's an instructor, so he knows how to teach. Not necessarily. He just met a series of benchmarks, right? And we've
Yeah,
seen
and
it.
in law enforcement, those benchmarks can be pretty small.
Yeah,
What I hated in law enforcement is sometimes, let's say a guy or a gal has been on the force for a while and they've been doing a good job, and sometimes the administration will say, "Hey, let's throw this guy a bone. He's been writing a lot of tickets and towing a lot of cars. Let's make him a firearms instructor, or let's make him a defensive tactics instructor." When they have no aptitude and no experience doing that,
yeah.
that's not a way to reward someone, because at the risk of,
Mm,
or at the benefit of boosting this dude's ego, now you're having someone in a role that they shouldn't be in, they're not qualified to be in, and the cops can see right through that, man. Just like if you've been to a few training courses and the instructor comes in to teach and he's full of shit, that's something that the students are going to pick up on.
See, this is what us real cops do. If your eyes go up and right, then you're accessing the creative centers of the brain, and we know you're full of shit.
Unless they've never been to a course before, they may still be, a little naive, but someone who's been around the block, dude, they're going to know right away if you're full of shit. And they're going to know right away if you're
yeah.
there to boost your own ego or if you're there for them, if
hmm
you're there to maximize their training time and to help them become better, or if you're going there just because you're getting paid 10 grand and this is a way that you boost your ego. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, there are
Yeah.
a few of those guys around.
Yeah. Well, maybe the industry will continue to weed some of those out. Like we can only do so much, and it's just amazing. Right. So next one. Speaking of, this is actually kind of a good lead in. Um, if you had only one piece of advice, I know because we could come up with five or six, one piece of advice to offer to somebody who's looking for their first, we'll call it a professional training course, not just, getting started thing. What would that be?
That's a good question. I would say you have to evaluate your own reality, your own real world of work,
Yeah.
and decide what course you want to take based on what you're likely to find yourself in, what kind of situation you're likely to be into. And I'm not disparaging people that save up their money and they want to take a high speed AR class where they're shooting out of vehicles and running and taking cover and all that stuff and working with a team of people and stuff. But again, if going back to our nothing against accountants, man, other than, man, I'm pissed off at accountants because I suck at math. So if I'm kicking shots at accountants, that's why. But if you're an accountant and you're in a course, I mean, eh, would it be sensible to take a AR-15 course, or would it be sensible to take a concealed carry course? Another thing too is if you're taking a concealed carry course and you're wearing a race holster and your pistol weighs 5 pounds and you have 14 magazines, dude, that's probably not the best combination. If you're taking a concealed carry course, like the course I'm going to be teaching out there, dude, I'm going to be teaching with a Glock 48, which is what I carry. So that's, I mean, and are you going to have spare magazines? I don't know. I mean, do you have spare magazines when you carry in the real world? These are questions you have to ask yourself. And if your
Right.
magazines are carried in the real world inside a pocket or something, and there's a lot of good gizmos now that can help you carry that in a pocket effectively. But then you come to the course and you have, a double or triple exterior magazine pouch. Those repetitions, those iterations aren't going to be as meaningful as if you had your carry gun and you're carrying a spare magazine where you would actually carry a spare magazine. So that's a long-winded way of saying what I would say is evaluate why you think you need training. Is it for home defense exclusively? Is it for concealed carry? And pick a course based on that. And then You do your part by bringing your real world gear. And I think that is
Yeah.
going to really maximize your training time and be the most beneficial.
Yeah, I see it all too often in training classes where, I'll show up and it's a concealed carry oriented class, right? And I'll show up and you've got somebody inevitably with a battle belt, or they got their IDPA, USPSA rig, or some other variation. And here's Dave with his appendix inside the waistband and a extra magazine on the sidecar, and a
Yep.
couple of tucked into my belt, and I'm standing there with a button down shirt over me, and I'm just being the gray man, and these guys show up with their all high speed gear, and then they can't perform.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean,
it's
I think that, again, not to stray too far off course, dude, but you're leading. I blame
yeah,
you for leading me into this question.
I know it's my
But no,
fault.
it's the same, man, with we all want a gear solution. We want a gear solution
Yeah,
to a lack of skill problem. And
yeah, it's a
yeah,
wetware
gear,
problem.
yeah, exactly. And gear can help, dude, but if you suck, buying a $5,000 pistol is not going to make you not suck.
May I suggest the 2011 Combat Master in combination with the 9mm Major?
It's serious, man. It's gear matters, but you don't need
Yeah.
anything extravagant, and that's the easiest thing though. And I think it's probably the same in other endeavors too. Like if you're a golfer and you're watching a golf tournament on TV, you
Hmm.
probably think, oh, if I want that putter, I wish I had that. But again, dude, that guy could probably putt with a frickin' stick he finds on the ground, because he's a professional. Just like some of these pro shooters, dude. Yeah, they may be shooting a whiz bang gun, but they could do the same thing with I'm exaggerating, but with a
Yeah.
Derringer or something. You know what I'm saying? Like these dudes and flat
Right.
out shoot. So it's not the fact that they have a $5,000 pistol that makes them good. It's that they're good and they happen to have a $5,000 pistol, which makes them a little bit better because their skill set is so high to begin with. It's just like the
Yeah.
rifle shooters, right? Like with me, my skill set with a rifle, I can probably shoot just as well with a sub $1,000 rifle that I could with a $5,000 rifle, right? Because that sub $1,000 rifle shoots better than I do, and that holds true with a lot of people that take pistol courses as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Um, so a little introspective one. In your in your career of learning, right, when you were a newbie gun guy and you were going to classes, um, was there one particular experience that you remember when you work with some of your students, especially like maybe newer students yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. That's a good question. There's so many little things there with that. I think one great bit of advice I have, and this is more for the combative side
Okay.
than the shooting side, but Kelly McCann's combatives instructor course, which was, we'll talk about that sometime. That was no joke.
Yeah.
I mean, there was 20 of us, 10 of us got the certification. And then there were a few that were uh, like got assistant instructor status and stuff like that. But it was difficult. I mean, there was guys there super skilled, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, dudes with Muay Thai experience, everything else, and it wasn't easy for anybody, myself certainly included. But one of the things during that class that Kelly emphasized that I think is important is when you demonstrate something on a student, you demonstrate that at full speed initially. And then you break it down and you go slow and you make all those points that you want to make. But if you demonstrate this in slow motion initially, you're going to get people, um, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they're going to be picking apart. Oh, I would do this right there. Oh, I would do that right there because you're
Hmm.
stopped in this position, right? Making points and demonstrating. Because if you demonstrate it at full speed, then you get their attention, then you break it down for them, and then
Yeah.
they're able to buy into it more because they're seeing it is valid from the first demonstration of it. That said,
Yeah.
I think there's far too many people in the shooting and combatives world that think they're too good to go slow. And I think that when you're learning a new skill, it's absolutely critical that you go slow.
Oh yeah.
You can build speed, But if your technique sucks, adding speed to it is just going to make you suck faster. So you need to understand what you're doing and then you build speed. Another thing that people kind of poo-poo on is myelination and building myelination. And that, for people who are unfamiliar with that term, is like how we build skill. And a lot of that is dependent on taking skills into digestible segments and mastering one segment before you go to the next. And a lot of that has to do with also practicing in slow motion, because another big component to building that skill, building that myelination, is to be able to immediately diagnose and correct errors. If all you're doing is practicing full speed all the time, all you're going to know is, did I make the time standard? It's going back to shooting. Did I make the time standard? And did I get my hit? But you're not going to know, you're not going to be able to correct anything because you're going too fast to
Yeah.
diagnose anything. So that's pretty critical. So I think that to answer your question, yeah, when you're demonstrating something, especially if it's something combatives oriented, demonstrate it at full speed. I'm not saying full power, right? I'm not saying you slap the shit
Right.
out of the guy who's your student who's helping you out, but just doing something at speed so that people understand it and they can see it and kind of take in the whole thing. And then you slow it down and then you take it step by step. But if you take it step by step in slow motion first, people, even if they're not trying to be a saboteur, right? They're going to be like reverse engineering what you're doing and thinking, oh, I would kick him in the balls there. Oh, I would, gouge his eye there, or whatever the case is, because you're not moving at speed. But when you demonstrate to them at speed, they're like, okay, I see. If I do this technique correctly, the bad guy doesn't have an opportunity to do all these things that he does when I'm watching it in slow motion. So I thought that was a pretty
Okay.
good
Yep.
bit of advice, because frankly, that was contrary to a lot of what I was taught previously, which was always demonstrate very slowly first and then pick up speed and everything else. So I'm not saying one way is right or wrong, but I will say when Kelly McCann is demonstrating something at full speed, it tends to get everybody's attention. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking, well, I would kick his ass if I were in that. No, no, you wouldn't, because you're seeing him
Yeah,
move
you
at
don't have time
speed.
to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember years ago, one of the training development courses I did, they talked about different speeds of competency, right? You have the speed of competency, like this is what I can do right out of the gate, cold, whatever that draw stroke is or whatever that skill is. And then you have the speed of demonstration, you have the speed of discussion, telling you but I get it. It's like, you know what? Let me show you what this thing looks like at we'll say almost real world speed. Boom, done, right? Okay. Now let's slow it down so you can see the bits and pieces and then we can put it all back together.
Yeah. And if I try to do it at full speed and I'm tripping over my feet, you as a student should be like, what the hell, dude?
Mm,
What's the
yeah,
refund
that's not going to
policy?
work.
You know what I mean? Because when we talked about earlier, like a guy could be super high level, like world class, but he can't teach. Well, the flip side of that is someone who could teach, but he can't demonstrate. Dude, if you
Hmm.
can't demonstrate with competence, no matter what you say,
You're
it's
not
not going to
ready.
have any, it's not going to carry any weight, because you're like, this guy can't do shit. Why should
Yeah,
I listen to what he's saying when he can't hit the target, or he can't hit this bag with power, or he can't do his own techniques on this student in the class. So, I mean, that's
yeah,
that's part of it too. You got to be able to do and you got to be able to teach. So that's where there's all this huge pool of instructors, right? And then it starts to get less and less and less when you're talking about, well, who has this experience and who could teach this and who's competent here. And pretty
hmm,
soon, whatever it is that you're looking for, there's no longer, thousands of instructors. There's now half a dozen that would be able to teach what it is you're looking for. If you're looking for something that's a
yeah.
that's a pretty tight niche, like what we're doing, right? Like with the
Oh yeah.
close quarter shooting and weapon retention stuff.
Oh, exactly. I remember a guy named Carl Wren said that there's hundreds of us out there fighting for about 10 to 15% of gun owners that actually want to train.
Yeah. It's been
You
weird. I don't
it's
know, and not to get too far off topic, but I know some
mhm,
big names instructors who have had a hard time filling classes lately. I think it's just partly, economy and a lot of things going on, sort of a
yeah.
lot of uncertainty in the world. But yeah, it's one of those things that I really value people's time commitment and their financial commitment to the course. So I'm
You
going to
have
go
to.
above and beyond to give them everything I possibly can. Now, for me, what that means is I have to hold back because my tendency is to try to give this dude my 15 years of knowledge in 2 days, right? And
Yeah.
15 years in this area and training with all these guys. So as an instructor, as I've matured, I've realized I have to give less, dude. Less is more because
Mhm.
then they're going to have a better chance of sort of not anchoring these skills, but at least remembering these skills and understanding them so that they can practice on their own and have a better chance of getting that way they get more value out of the class versus if I show them 47 things, but they only get 3 repetitions on each of those, they could leave the class kind of more confused than when they got there. So
Yeah.
keep the techniques simple, keep the techniques few. What we're always looking for are techniques that would apply against a wide array of attacks, right? When we talk about weapon retention, I don't want to learn a different technique if a dude grabs with his left hand with his fingers on top versus if he grabs with his right hand with his fingers below the gun or grabs with 2 hands. I don't have time in the middle of someone trying to take my gun and kill me with it to choose between technique 15A or 17B. I need to have
Right.
one or two principles that I can apply that are going to be effective no matter how my gun is grabbed. So that's what we're always looking for.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right. So next question. Basically every time I talk to an instructor on this podcast, we quickly delve into our frustrations on instructor development and technique. So it happens. I think it's just something we have to expect. Um, Now think about your let's go to the law enforcement career. Okay. If you could take one piece of modern tech, send it back to the start of your career, you pick it up and it works. What would that be?
Man, that's a good question. You know, from a shooting standpoint, firearm standpoint, I would say red dots. Red dots
Yeah.
were certainly around when I started in law enforcement in like 97, but they weren't prevalent and they weren't practical.
Yeah.
And nowadays, they are
They're like this
so,
big.
oh, dude. And everyone would say, red dots are the future. No, dude, red dots are here. They're the present, but I
Yeah.
wish in this regard, red dots were the past because I think your hit rates are going to be much better. Your confidence level in your officers are going to be much better when they have red dot.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of like what I mentioned a little while ago, how you want one technique to apply in a lot of different situations. It's the same with shooting, right? Like if you have a patrol rifle and it has a red dot on it, and why would you not have that same sighting system on your pistol if that were an option? So I think red dots are kind of a game changer that I think I wish was prevalent back then, but isn't so much now.
Hmm.
Um,
That's common.
so
That's
yeah,
a common answer.
and it's weird though with technology in general, it made my job as a police officer so much easier, but also it was also more distracting, right? Because you're heading to a call, you got your computer with all this information on it, and you have your phone that gives you have other apps on your phone and everything else. And it's just like, it's sort of all these things can be beneficial, but they can also be dangerous in a sense that they take you out of the moment. So, but
Right.
yeah, to answer your question, just one bit of technology, I think red dots, had they been as robust, had the battery life that they do now,
Yeah.
and if they were as small as they could be now, and we had that back then, I think that would have been hugely beneficial.
Yeah. It would have been, I think it would have been amazing. Um, so I'm gonna skip around a little bit. This is gonna be interesting. You don't have to use names, locations, or any other identifiers. You can keep it as generic as you need to. Um, and it doesn't have to be, don't even think about like, oh, I'll ask it, then I'll qualify it. What was the dumbest thing you've seen a student do? And it doesn't have to be unsafe. Well, we've all had that scary unsafe moment. If you don't, or if you haven't yet, you haven't been teaching long enough. But what's the dumbest thing you've seen a student do?
Well, this just came to me when I was in the police academy. This has nothing to do with shooting, but it's a dumb question. People say there's no dumb questions. Well, I got one for you.
Yeah, there has been one.
So we're sitting there and we're cadets in the police academy, and they're talking about responding to a vehicle collision where there may be injuries. And
Okay.
they were talking about the potential dangers of moving someone and causing further injury, like if they have a neck injury or something. So they're talking
Right.
about leave them in the car, do this and that and everything else, wait for EMS to respond and all stuff. Some dude raises this question: what if the car is on fire? So the instructor didn't even answer him. He just turned around on the whiteboard. He wrote common sense. It's like that. So that's one that just came to me when you asked that. But and that cadet had some other issues too. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
times some stuff happens that's dumb and it seems funny, but it's because it's not that the student is dumb. It's just that they're ignorant to firearms, or they're ignorant to firearm safety, or they're ignorant to whatever that is that
Yeah.
goes on. Um, this isn't intentional that people are doing this, but a lot of times they're asking just dumb questions. I was at a class recently, and it was a firearms class, but they were talking about edge weapons and the danger that they pose and everything. And so one dude raise his hand. And there were several other questions asked before this and after this by this guy. But he asked, what's an edged weapon? It's like, I mean, the definition is in the name. It's a weapon that's so anyway. But I think a lot of times people are nervous and they just
Hmm.
are not thinking clearly. So there's a lot of dumb stuff that happens. I've seen a lot of instructors do dumb stuff, that's for sure too,
Oh yeah.
myself included. And I think you have to be, as long as it's not unsafe, I think you have to be able to laugh at some of that stuff. And you know uh, dude, think of all the dumb shit you've done in your life, and if you did that in front of a class full of people, how would you feel? So it's something
Hmm.
that we should all be thick-skinned and kind of laugh it off a little bit, but you don't want to be too critical of someone who's probably nervous more than we think, because they're coming to a class where you're going to be pressing a trigger and something's going to feel like it's exploding in your hand. And
Hmm.
it could be nerve-wracking for these people. So
Yeah.
anytime they have a question, I would rather them ask, even if it's dumb, than for them to think they understand what's going on and then they do something that is either inappropriate or unsafe. So I think we have to
Yeah.
laugh it off, but we have to be careful too, not to be too critical of folks, even if they ask a dumb question or something.
Right. Like I learned a long time ago, like there are no dumb questions, just the ones you didn't ask.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And
Because
just
that's a guy.
ask it.
Because if you ask a question, even if it's dumb, that's the dude who's willing to look foolish, and
Yeah.
he's going to learn. Whereas someone who's afraid to ask the question because they're like, oh man, if I ask this question, I'm an
Yeah.
instructor, and if I ask this question, people might make fun of me, or they might assume I already know this or whatever. That's the guy who he's going to plateau because he's not open-minded enough
Yep.
to look foolish.
Yeah.
So,
There's a term out there. It's was it? I think it's called challenge point learning, or being not afraid to fail forward.
mm-hmm. I
Right.
like that.
Take that step. Stub your toe a little bit. Bounce your face against the glass wall a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can learn from it, was it really that stupid then?
Yep.
Right? Like your guy, like the common sense. How many people went, "Oh yeah, okay,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Duh. Yeah,
and that
maybe we
and
should get
and
the
that
guy out of the
that's the
car.
that but that's the thing too, dude. So that's a prime example, and this relates to what we teach as well. Is you can have a skill set which is, you know I'm going to respond to this person who's injured in a vehicle, and I'm going to apply this neck brace, and I'm going to do all these steps. But even though you're doing everything right, if the
Hmm.
car's on fire, you're doing everything wrong, because now what you need to do is get this dude out of the burning car, and then you'll
Yeah.
worry about his neck, type of thing. But all
Yeah.
we can do, and Dave Spalding, who's a huge mentor to both of us, he always says this: all we can do is give the student a skill set. But what the challenging thing is, they have to understand when to apply that skill set under what
Oh yeah.
circumstance, right? And so that is the hard part, because you can go and you can improve your shooting skill in 2 days. You can improve your ability to retain possession of your firearm in 2 days. but you're not necessarily going to know when to apply all that stuff. And that's partly on the student to understand that things are not going to go in an A, B, C, D format like you did in training. One of the things I
No.
teach when it comes to close quarter stuff in and this is one of the things that I think is important is you have to expect things to get ugly because now you're fighting with another dude. Have you ever watched an MMA fight, a boxing match or something where people don't both get hit? You know, both fighters get hit
Oh
almost
yeah.
every time, multiple times. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to get ugly. And if you're freaking out because you learned this kata technique, right? That you're going to do, and the bad guy doesn't do anything except for what he knows you're trying to prompt him to do. And then you're faced with someone who's like, he doesn't know that if you turn his wrist, he's supposed to fall on the ground. You know what I mean? He's like, okay. And then
Well,
now he
everybody
wants to,
else did it in practice.
exactly.
Right?
So I
Yeah.
think that's important as well.
Cool. All right. Let's turn the page. And this might take some thinking. So, you never
Uh-oh.
know. What's the bravest thing you've ever seen anyone do?
Oh man. You know, I don't know that there's one that particularly stands out. To me, I know a lot of officers over the years, myself included, have been afraid. That's not something we like to say very often. But when you're on a SWAT team and you're about to force entry into a residence where there are maybe multiple armed assailants who've committed pretty violent crimes. I don't care how badass you are, dude. That's something that requires a little intestinal fortitude because when you
Yeah.
breach that door, you don't know what you're getting, man. And anybody who's done that has my respect. It's just like the people, that same analogy with fighting. Like you may not be the best fighter, but anyone who steps into that octagon, dude, they are deserving of respect because they're putting it on the line. It's not just watching
Yeah.
from their house eating Cheetos, right? Saying, "Oh, I would do that. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Why did
Right.
you?" It's like, dude, okay, well, show me what you can do, and
Yeah.
to put it on the line where you're risking injury, you're risking ridicule, you're risking humiliation. Yeah, that's saying something. But I will
Hmm.
say I wasn't here for this event when it happened. It's towards the end of my career and I was out on injury leave. But there was a situation where a good friend of mine was working. He gets flagged down about someone who's taken his wife hostage, or someone has a female hostage at an
Oh
apartment
boy.
complex, holding her at gunpoint. So my buddy, another officer, a few other officers respond to this area. They're taking gunfire from this dude. They're hunkered down behind vehicles and stuff, and they do exactly what they're supposed to do. They suck it up, and it's also low light if it weren't dramatic enough, and they make it happen, man. They close ground with this dude. They end up taking a shot. They resolve the situation, and that is an ultimate act of, I would say, bravery and heroism that they are putting
Yeah.
themselves they're knowingly putting themselves in extreme danger because in that situation they understood very clearly that their life was not the most important. The hostage's life was the most important. And
Yeah.
so while staying behind the vehicles as you're taking fire is the sensible thing to do for self-preservation, that's
Well,
not
yeah.
what our job is as law enforcement officers. Our
Yeah.
job is to protect the innocent. That's the primary job, and they did that,
Yeah.
and everything worked out well. And that gentleman uh, who took that shot, very skilled guy. If there was someone at the department who I would want to take that shot when I was being held hostage, it would be that dude. And also he's very self-critical, right? Very confident guy,
Hmm.
but also the first to say, "Hey, what could I have done better? Do you think this and that?" And so
Yeah.
yeah, that
He
that
wants to
that
learn. He
again,
wants to
again,
be
I
better.
wasn't there for that, but I did see the body cam footage. He sent it to me right
Oh,
away and wanted a critique, and I'm like, my critique is that you did exceptionally well, dude. Like, like
yeah. There's no
so,
critique, dude. You made
yeah.
it.
But a lot of times, in law enforcement, that's depending where you work, right? Like some cities, big cities that are super violent, some areas of big cities that are super violent. You may be an officer and be involved in multiple shootings, right, in your career. For me, I was never involved in a shooting, which I'm thankful for. I like to think I was always prepared, and there was a lot of close calls. But being a cop isn't necessarily being in shootings every week, but it's about overcoming those little, not little, but overcoming those more seemingly mundane challenges, like going into someone's darkened house looking for them because they just committed some
Yeah.
heinous act or something, and they're armed. I mean, that's imagine uh, the butterflies or whatever it is, the nervousness that you feel during force on force, right? Where yeah, that simunition round or that airsoft round, it's going to sting, but more than that, it's going to be embarrassing, right? Well,
Yeah.
now think of that same situation, but it's not going to sting or be embarrassing. This could be the end of my life, or this could be that I fail to do what I'm supposed to do, and now my partners are in danger from this dude if I don't clear this corner correctly, if I don't respond correctly in this situation. So I
Yeah.
think I think there's a lot of everyday hero examples that we see that aren't on television, right? That don't make the news.
Oh yeah.
And it's just for a concealed carry holder, it's kind of the same thing. Like those concealed carry holders, like I've never witnessed this firsthand, but somebody who sees a situation, realizes that there's an active killer here, and they decide to intervene, that's a hero because he doesn't have to do that or she doesn't have to do that, right? They are not duty bound. No one's going to second guess if they don't get involved. But for them to put everything on the line to protect other people who they probably don't even know, that's a hero, So there's more of
Oh
that
yeah.
going on than people realize as well.
It's just crazy. And it's the stuff that doesn't make the news that we never hear about, and it is what it is. When it goes wrong is when we usually hear about it, when it's exceptionally out of the norm.
Yep.
Right? It's just something that is just hugely positive, heroic, that is not among I guess you could say the standard
Yep.
stuff that everybody has to do. That's crazy. So Rich, so let's get another hit. So we're coming out, we're doing close quarter shooting,
Yep.
July 25, 26, right? And it's going to be here in Rochester at the home office and then our private range. And people, I've got the link up on. We'll put the link below, so all the registration's going through you guys. And then I think, to be honest, I feel that the empty hand stuff is it's a huge mistake not to train it, because I look at it this way: we just got done with some less lethal training courses to get recertified and everything, and I look at I guess you say the chance that I'm going to be in a civilian defensive situation, even in Rochester, which is getting a little worse and it has some issues like any other major city. It's still pretty minimal, but it's going to be more likely I'm going to have to use a less lethal or an empty hand type response.
Absolutely. So
Huge.
yeah, if your goal is to be prepared, not just prepared with your
Yeah.
firearm or prepared for a shooting, but to be prepared to protect yourself, to neglect empty-handed skills is completely ridiculous
Yeah.
because, as you mentioned, the chance of using empty hands to protect yourself is infinitely higher than your chance of having to use a firearm to protect yourself. And the worst of those is when you don't have any other skills except for a firearm. And so
Yeah.
you're in a situation that doesn't rise to the level of you drawing your firearm, but you do so anyway, either as a bluff or because you don't have any other option. Now, dude calls your bluff. Now you got a handful of
Yeah.
gun and no authorization to use it, right? I mean, this.
Yeah.
So you need to be well rounded. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah. And then, this class is just one of the many that you should do, but there's a lot of, I've got all the gear. I've got UTMs and simunitions. I've got all the gear to do reality-based training. We're working on kind of reworking it and sending it out. Maybe we'll do a one or two before the end of the year. But it's just, people got to understand that it's a very let's see, what were the words? Rapidly unfolding,
Mhm.
rapidly evolving, violent encounter.
Yep.
Right. And we have to be able to adapt and not be behind the curve so much for the whole thing, or else we're just going to
Yeah.
lose.
And that's an important aspect of training, hugely important and often overlooked is that interactive type training, because that is a situation where you can start to employ the correct or incorrect technique or tactic at the appropriate or inappropriate time. That gives you an idea. Whereas, like, but to just do that too soon, like to just start people off with that training, I think it doesn't give them the foundation. So
Yeah.
you have to give them some appropriate responses, and then they have to, through that training, realize what response is best suited for a particular situation. And there's no best response usually, but what response is appropriate, because there may be several responses that are all appropriate. And when we used to
Yeah.
do this training at the police department, I love to see how people would respond differently, right? Like if we used to do hood drills, and this is very common, so you have like a hood over the
Oh
defender,
God, I hated those.
and as soon as you pull that up, you have to respond to whatever you're facing. So we would
Yeah.
do it sometimes where the instructor has a boxing glove on, and as soon as the hood comes off, you're punching that dude, not full force, but you're popping that dude in the mouth and he has to get his bearings and figure out what's going on. Is he going to go to a
Yep.
baton? Is he going to go to pepper spray? What's he going to do? He's going to draw his firearm. Is that appropriate? And then we would do some where the hood comes off and they're staring at the muzzle of a firearm, right? Do they try to disarm the firearm, or do they just hit it aside and step back and draw their gun? You see a lot of different responses, and there's not necessarily a best response, but there are certainly several that would be appropriate and several that are inappropriate or ineffective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to find the right one. So yeah, so basically, I can't wait. I can't wait to hang out with you, after the course, chill and get into a class with you again. Um, and the gang that's I know is already signed up, they're pretty excited about it because some of them did your class before last time, and then some of them have been listening to them chatter about it. So
Yep.
when I put the word out there, they were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, me."
Yeah.
So
And
I think it's
this
going to
will
be
be
an
a cool
exciting
one.
course.
This will be a cool one, Dave, because it's the same principles that I taught before, but in a little bit different format. And I really am looking forward to teaching it as two separate things, a non-live fire day and then a live fire
Yeah,
day. And the non-live fire day, since we're spending a whole day doing that, it gives us more time to address like issues like counter weapon stuff, for instance, like if someone
yeah.
has a knife or a pipe wrench or whatever the case is. And again, I'm not talking about, disarming this person of a knife, but I'm talking about doing what you can do to prevent getting cut or to minimize that happening while you're
Yeah.
able to disengage, draw your firearm, and get to a position of advantage, right? Because that's the goal, is to maintain distance. If we have a firearm, typically our goal is to maintain distance, because for a contact distance weapon like a club or a knife to be effective, that dude has to be in range. And we want to stay outside of that range. But again, it's not a perfect world. We may not have a choice and we may find ourselves stuck in that, close
Hmm.
quarter range. And we have to have some skills that can help us thrive there until we can disengage and get to a more sighted fire, a more, familiar shooting position.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rich, this was I tell you, it was a ton of fun just sitting there just chatting about stuff and then throwing these little questions at you. Um, so thanks for coming on the podcast, finally making our schedules work. I know how busy you are, and I'm pulled in a whole bunch of different directions too. But everyone, thank you for tuning in. And I need you to do a few things. One, like this video, comment on it, ask some questions below. We always monitor them. Subscribe to the channel because the more people subscribing, the more people the word gets out there. Share this out to somebody too, especially if you think there's somebody who is a concealed carrier who could use this type of training. And then maybe even you are the one that needs this training too. And the other thing is mash that notification button so that whenever we put a new video up, you'll know about it. And then, but like I said, we're going to get Rich's link down below, and we want to see you there at the class, and we're going to have some fun with this. All right. Rich, thank you again. It was awesome. I know we'll be chatting in the next few days. And everyone out, talk to you later. Thanks for checking in.
Thanks, Dave.